Thank you for watching my show, William Wallace for America. As you guys know, and I always start out my show with, I'm always looking for finding ways to not only protect freedom in America, but to do it peacefully. And I'm interjecting that because my guest today claims that his organization not only protects freedom, but does it in the most peaceful, orderly way. With me today is Richard Mack of the Constitutional, wait, I'm going to get it wrong already. The the it
Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers
that
Association.
there we go. The CSPOA.org, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Well, I'm scrolling your website at the bottom, and thanks for helping with that tongue twister and getting it out there. I appreciate it.
Well,
But
that's
what
okay. I've always wanted to meet William Wallace.
I love it. Hey, look,
Yeah,
I
in
just don't have my
person.
kilt on today.
Probably my favorite movie of all time.
Well, thank you. I just don't have my kilt on today.
Yeah.
There's a reason I don't wear my kilt.
Yeah.
I have really ugly white legs. So,
Oh,
but there's other reasons. I'll tell you that later.
oh.
So talk to me about what the Constitutional Sheriff's Police Officer, or and
Peace Officers.
Peace Officer Association does. What do you all do? How are you all different than the local sheriffs, or what is your organization? How is it structured? Let's get the people up to date on that.
Well, first, all of this was born out of my lawsuit against the Clinton administration back when I was sheriff in Arizona, in Southeast Arizona, in Graham County. I actually did something quite historic. I was the first sheriff in American history to file a lawsuit against the federal government, take it all the way to the Supreme Court, and win. Now, I thank the good Lord every day that 6 other sheriffs joined me in this lawsuit because that was a vital part of the success. But be that as it may, I set the example when I was sheriff in standing for freedom, standing for the Constitution, keeping my oath of office, making sure that the God-given rights of my citizens in my county were being protected. And that's all we need to do nationwide. And it's the doctrine of interposition. You interpose. You don't commit acts of violence, but you let the federal government know. You let any bureaucrat know from the state or federal government, you are not going to come into my county and abuse the rights of the citizens, commit acts of oppression against law-abiding citizens, and no matter what, do they have jurisdiction, and do we trust these people from the bureaucracies of Washington, D.C.? Do we trust, and is the federal government trustworthy? Do we trust the FBI? Do we trust the FDA? Do we trust the EPA? Do we trust the Secret Service? Do we trust the BATF? Do we trust the DEA? These agencies, especially the IRS, have routinely committed crimes against the American people.
We're seeing it.
Any sheriff allow these agencies to come into his county unfettered and do whatever they want to the citizens of that particular sheriff? That is just absolutely wrong. We train sheriffs and peace officers and other public officials as to what their true role is in preserving our God-given constitutional republic.
So how do the sheriffs,
once those people see that, then they're going to act accordingly. And we have had dozens and dozens of sheriffs defend liberty with the threat of being arrested by the federal government. Never.
Where is it that the sheriffs get that much authority that they're?
Ooh.
I don't want to say that they're outside of the purview of the law, but
No,
and then also I'm waiting for that answer here in a second. But also, a lot of sheriffs get political. They step even outside of that purview, and they become more of a political office instead of one that upholds the right of the people. So, answer my question: where do the sheriffs get that much authority?
Well, 98% of the sheriffs in this country are elected. They get their office from the voters. But that's the answer. That's actually the answer. The most powerful entity in our government is we the people. The first 3 words of the Constitution, We, the people. The people of this country bestow and delegate all power and authority to our representatives. That includes the sheriff, and it's especially the sheriff because he's the only elected law enforcement officer anywhere in the country. He's the only one elected in the county. He's the only one elected in the country. He reports directly to the power source. He has no other supervisor or boss other than the people of his county.
So
And he
just
has
by the mere
promised
fact,
them in God's name, one final point there. He has promised them in God's name that he will uphold and defend, protect, and preserve their God-given constitutional rights.
this is amazing. So just by the sheer act, now where is it that says that the rights of the people are to be protected by our elected officials, which covers a sheriff? Where is that? Is it written in our Constitution? Is it written in the state constitution? Where did that authority come from?
Well, it would actually it actually comes from God. It actually comes from the premise of our entire Constitution that, like I said, we the people are the first three words of the Constitution. And it comes from the founding fathers. If you read what they said and did about self-governance, and that we the people are the most important part. If you take the triangle, if you look at this triangle, this is how every government has worked throughout world history, except the American dream, the American government, the American experiment. We term the we for instance, up at the top is the president or the king or the parliament or some oligarchy or monarchy. Well, in America, we turned that upside down, and the triangle of authority goes like this. There's a straight line, and then it goes down to a triangle to the point at the bottom. It's an upside down triangle. And I'm sure I didn't draw that very well, but there it is right there. That's the top. And we, the people, are at the top because we are in charge of this government. And it's one of the biggest problems. In fact, I'll tell you right now, I believe the biggest problem in America is ignorance and corruption. And so when all of these government officials commit acts of corruption, there's too many ignorant people in the country that don't know what to do about it and don't even know if that it's wrong. And so we have got to wake up. Americans have got to wake up, take our power back, and make sure that we work closely with our sheriff to, as James Madison said, erect the barriers against the encroachments of the national authority. The federal government especially has stolen and usurped so much authority that is not theirs. And the states and we the people, as mentioned, and you wanted to mention about the power of the people, first three words of Constitution and the 10th Amendment. It says the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. We are just as powerful as the states, if you look at that.
I get it.
The
Right.
powers not delegated to the federal government belong to us because we are the power source that generated all of that.
And you're alluding to something you just said, or going back to something you just said that you alluded to. And on an interview that I did yesterday with a gentleman by the name of Roman Bueller of an organization called the Madison Coalition, that's going to be on my podcast tomorrow on the recording. We talked about how the federal agencies, the departments, have been able to create rules, laws, and not legislation, but rules and laws
It's the
that,
same as legislation.
yeah,
It's the same as.
well, it gets counted as legislation, but it doesn't go through Congress, so it
No.
circumvents our Constitution and doesn't get elected on in Congress. So it's
No.
not even a constitutional law as a result.
And our Constitution is being destroyed from within, and it's on its deathbed. It's hanging by a thread, and we've got to wake up and realize that if there's no U.S. Constitution, there's no United States of America. And this Constitution was the most perfect government document ever in the history of the world, and we better wake up and revive it. And it's going to take a lot of work, but if we join forces in our counties with our sheriffs and erect those barriers, It is a peaceful and effective process. And let me tell you right now, there's 3,000 sheriffs in America. If we have just a third, 1,000 sheriffs standing for liberty, we win. It stays peaceful, and it's the most effective solution out there.
So, what do you think is the action that the sheriffs have to take? You're mentioning that there's 3,000 sheriffs. All it takes is 1,000. What actions do those sheriffs actually have to take to be able to? I don't want to say overturn any elections that might go awry, to help us take our power back. What actions do they actually have to take now and in the future?
Well, first, there have only been about a half a dozen sheriffs that even investigated election fraud. Almost every one of them have made arrests. And that should tell everybody something. That should have told the other sheriffs that every single one of them should have made sure that there was no criminal activity in the elections of 2020, or that there's not going to be in 24. But election fraud has been happening for quite some time. Every sheriff and every chief of police has a responsibility to investigate that and make sure that the process is fair and honest, which would mean we need to go back to paper ballots and get rid of those machines. No one can guarantee the integrity of those machines.
How can a sheriff do that? Or can they?
Well, he starts an investigation first, and he goes and talks to the people that are in charge of those machines, and he finds out 100%.
So
can these machines be hacked or not? Oh, excuse me.
That's all right. No problem. No problem at all.
But they can do it, and they have the authority to do it. And that's why I say the sheriffs that have done it have made arrests. And we get reports every day on the internet and on MSN. I get.
Do you have any of that on your website?
Pardon me?
Do you have any of that on your website?
Which
about stories about the sheriffs that made arrest?
Yeah, I think so, but it's not as prominent as maybe I should put it. But I could tell you their names right now. The California sheriff in San Juan County arrested a city councilman, and it was for ballot harvesting. He did 75 ballots from his home address. That man's been arrested. You can look at Sheriff Bob Songer in Washington. You can look at Sheriff Wilmot in Yuma, Arizona. All of these have stories on the internet. You can look up the sheriffs that have been investigated and made arrests on voter fraud.
So I want to bring something else into this conversation. I'm hearing more and more talk about these citizen grand juries. Are you familiar with it?
Oh, very much. I've argued with these people for 15 years.
Oh, really? Okay, because let me tell you, when you talk to them, they've got a lot of abundant. They've got a lot of proof that that's the way to do it.
They've not one of those grand juries has ever issued an indictment that did anything.
Okay,
you don't get to self-appoint a grand jury. You and I have no authority to get together right now and form a grand jury, try somebody in absentia, and then issue an indictment. I said, who's going to serve the indictment? Oh, man.
That's all right.
They said the sheriff will. The sheriff will. And I said, no, he won't. There's not been a single sheriff to ever do that in this country. And then they said, well, we're going to get continental marshals. And I said, what is that? You're making up a position so you can have your way with grand juries?
Right.
Look, there is a grand jury system in this country, and we all agreed on it, that it would go through a certain process. And I am appalled at the corruption within the grand jury system. A leading authority in New York, in fact, it was the Chief Justice of New York Supreme Court about 25 years ago, said that you can indict a ham sandwich. He's the one that came up with that ham sandwich thing.
Okay.
The process, the corruption within our justice system is horrible, but self-appointed grand juries are not the answer. We still need to go through the lawful process that is associated with that.
I did an interview about it and talked to somebody about it just because I was just curious on hearing more about it, and they are convinced it's the way to go. But even
It's not
after,
either. It's
but
it. They have no success whatsoever.
But even and to your point, Sheriff, after I listened to what they had to say, I said, "Well, that sounds great. It sounds really interesting. It sounds like like it's a great idea on paper. However, our legal system that has been in place, the courts, the sheriffs, the everything being in place, I don't think they would ever be able to get, like you just now made that point. You would
It's
never be able to get a judge or anybody to have any standing on it. I mean,
no,
that
they
would
won't.
be to indict somebody, and I could just see the
The
different.
whole thing stops as soon as you ask who's going to prosecute it and who's going to serve the indictment, the writ of the indictment on the person that's being indicted. They
So
have no.
so
It
so
doesn't have. The whole thing stops.
so
I've had some of these people on my own show on Brighty on TV and other radio shows, and they can't take it past the indictment being served or the prosecution.
now
It all ends right there.
Yeah, and not only do I appreciate that information, but in my opinion, it starts pointing back to you and your organization. Did you start this organization?
I did in 2011.
Okay, so it all points back to your organization as being a legal, safe, and effective way to help improve our election, not only our elections, but our communities, our
Everything,
states, and our country
everything.
as a way that all you're doing is you're saying you're kind of reminding the sheriffs, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're kind of reminding the sheriffs around the world or the country, hey, look, we not only have legal authority, we have the responsibility to
Yeah,
be able to protect and defend our Constitution and the
yeah,
people's rights in our communities. And if we don't think it's being done, we have the, not only the right, but the responsibility to step up and do it. Is that a fair assessment?
that's a good review of the whole thing, and I could tell you story after story after story. When I was sheriff, we had a bridge that washed out, and the Army Corps of Engineers and the EPA would not let us fix it. Finally, the board voted unanimously just for our county to fix it. They threatened to arrest the county commissioners and the maintenance people, and I told them, I said, "You're not arresting anybody in my county. I'm not in charge of bridges, but I am in charge of who arrests who, and you're not arresting anybody." They left town. We fixed the bridge. Everything was fine.
That's an amazing story. I absolutely. So, do you have other examples? If can you give a
Oh
few
yeah.
examples of
Oh,
things
all
that you've
sorts of
done
them.
or done? Go ahead.
Sheriff Brad Rogers in Elkhart County, Indiana, was protecting an Amish farmer. The Amish are being attacked all over the country by federal and state agencies because they won't pasteurize their milk. That's a religious thing that they have not been doing for a century and a half. And now all of a sudden the federal government and all these people want to come in and force them to do this and arrest them and destroy their land, destroy their property, destroy their business. Well, Sheriff Brad Rogers said it's not going to happen in my county. And he told the FDA to get out. And if they came back without due process, duly signed warrants, he would arrest them. And they left. And they
It's
left this man alone.
see this
the
this
name
is
of the name of the Amish farmer was David Hostetler, and he's been eternally grateful to us and Brad Rogers, Sheriff Brad Rogers, and he's now a county commissioner.
See, here's what's interesting. And you're just now giving me a third example. I'm going to ask you for another one here in a minute of things that I've heard through history of when the people stand up peacefully, things happen. What was the what
But
was
have
the
that. Wait, let me interrupt there. But have that peaceful stance and protest or march with your sheriff and his deputies.
that is a great. So we just need more sheriffs and deputies to I guess live by the methods of the constitutional sheriffs and police officers. What?
Live your oath.
Right.
You swore an oath. You're required by the sixth article of the U.S. Constitution to swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution. How is it that we keep that? We train them to do it.
And what's interesting, like to your point here, what was the ranch? Who were the ranchers that were had their cattle was grazing on the Bureau of Land Management
The
property,
Bundys,
the
the
Bundys,
Bundys in Nevada.
and the people came out. Did the Sheriff's Association stand with them?
No, that was one problem. The sheriff came basically when the whole thing was over. So it's we the people did that one.
Yeah. So
And
and
it was an amazing thing. And guess what? There's only one rancher that has survived the federal government, and it's the Bundys. They're still ranching on that land today. There's one rancher left. Out of 53 ranchers, there's one left. It was the one that stood up peacefully against the onslaught and oppression of the federal government.
And then I always like to tell the story of the Whiskey Rebellion. Not many people like to talk about the Whiskey Rebellion. Do you know about the Whiskey Rebellion, Sheriff Mack?
Sure.
So,
But
so
go ahead. I don't want to talk right now.
well, yeah, that's in short, the people stood up to what they felt was an unfair tax, and the government backed down. Of course, it was after the revolution, but imagine if what you're telling us here is accurate, and I know it is, because I've talked with you before. Imagine if the people standing with the Sheriff's Association, and look, there's going to be a lot of people, and I'm going to say really smart people, that are even on the right or the left, whatever, that are going to say, oh, this is all hogwash. This is
Well,
all
we get
conspiracy
attacked
theory.
all the time. We get attacked that we're fomenting chaos, and this is so. Sheriff Mack thinks that the sheriff should pick and choose which laws to enforce. My dear friends, the picking and choosing was over when he raised his arm and swore in God's name to uphold and defend the Constitution. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, not bureaucratic policies or enactments from them saying what is and what isn't. These bureaucrats have no authority whatsoever. They have no legislative authority. They push their will on everybody by whim and stratagem, mostly because they're a bunch of bullies. And the IRS especially has perfected the art of being a bully, and intimidation is the name of the game. And all of these things need to be reversed. And a good constitutional sheriff in your county will do just that.
But and again, like I mentioned earlier and said a couple times again, is a lot of sheriffs become more like politicians than not only servants of the people, but servants of our Constitution. And
I'm
those are the
afraid you're
ones that
correct.
kind of, oh, this is the political process. And they go, all those, all those other guys, those constitutional sheriffs, police officers association people types, they're all conspiracy theorists. They can't change anything. That's not the law.
Well,
But
and
we
let me
forget.
tell you one other example of that very same thing. You talked about the Bundys. There was another rancher, Wayne Hage, in Nye County, Nevada, and he was going through the same process. And the sheriff went out and told these people, he told the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, the original BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, and the Forest Service, he said, you're not touching any of these cattle here on this land. They're here lawfully, and you're to leave them alone. And the federal government told that sheriff, his name was Tony DeMeo. They said, Sheriff, we're coming back with our SWAT team. And he said, good, I have one too. And you know what? They never came back. And this went through the courts, and Wayne Hage won in the Nevada courts to keep his ranch. And his children, still today, this fight has been going on for 30 years. Because the federal government refuses to follow the law.
Well, again, like we said, a lot of these agencies that have been created by our federal government are all creating rules, laws, and legislation circumventing the Constitution. It's not going through. And a lot of people, out of respect for the law, they say, out of respect for, but those departments have created these rules and laws without constitutional authority. And I've got, and again, I only say this to be devil's advocate because I get in my ear a lot of smart people that like to say, oh, that's that crazy talk. But the reality is we've gotten to a time and place where the narratives have convinced many people that if you talk about the Constitution and your rights in the Constitution, you're really more like a conspiracy theorist than just going along to get along type. Am I right?
Yeah, you are. And how about a couple of other examples of very historical, powerful events that happened in our country? I ask every sheriff, would you have arrested Martin Luther King? He got arrested 30 times, over 30 times. Never committed a crime, but he got arrested 30 times. Why? And then how about Rosa Parks? She was arrested because she didn't give her seat to a white man. And this is when I was alive at the time. I was 3 years old when it happened. December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks was taken to jail in Montgomery, Alabama. That's an absolute outrage because we didn't have peace officers who were exercising their moral authority and exercising right from wrong. We don't take somebody's liberty because they committed a crime of not giving their seat to a white man. Are you totally out of your mind? I want every peace officer and every sheriff in this country to answer that question. Would you have arrested Rosa Parks then? Then why do you do it to a gun owner or to a tax protester or somebody peacefully marching or somebody who wants to go to a school board meeting and give their opinions to the school board? Why are we going after Catholics? Why are we going after Amish farmers? Why don't we support the cause of liberty in America and then we don't have to go through all this crap again? We won a Revolutionary War in 1778 or so. We won, and it was to have self-governance, and it was to have a limited government and to keep government out of our lives. And the Constitution's Bill of Rights were specifically designed to keep government out of our lives and off our backs. And it was a Declaration of Rights that they were never supposed to be able to violate. And now Congress hires bureaucracies that violate them every day, and they don't do a damn thing about it. It's time we did something about it, and we can take back America county by county and state by state.
Do you
And
think that? Do you think
sheriff working with the people, we can do it?
Do you think that your organization would actually be able to help somebody? Let's say somebody has a suppressor and they didn't get a class 3, and we all know that that's a DEA. I'm sorry, a
BATF. That's a BATF regulation.
BATF regulation, and let's say they're on their way, to the courts or jail or whatever. But the reality is that law was created by a department without going through the federal government, out through Congress.
We've already had that happen. We've already had sheriffs stand against that, and pistol braces also. And we had a BATF agent go into a man's home and wanted to come in and check his guns. And that man called the sheriff's office, and the sheriff's office told the guy to get out of town. And it was an agent of the BATF, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. These people will do anything they want until somebody else stands in the way. And there again, the doctrine of interposition. Stand in the way.
So let's talk to the sheriffs who might not know about your organization. Do you all train sheriffs that either don't have a clue, or do you convince sheriffs and train the ones who are turning a blind eye? Maybe they got political and they don't want to hear this constitutional stuff because that constitutional stuff is really crazy. Conspiracy stuff. I'm joking, being sarcastic, of course.
You nailed it. You nailed it. Got it right on the head there. That's why I say I believe we can get 1,000, because I know there's 1,000 good sheriffs who can do this, and we've had hundreds of sheriffs at our national conventions. What I want to do is raise the money to have one big national convention, get 1,000 sheriffs there, and say, okay, now let's go do this. We've had sheriffs that have done this that have lost the next election. We've had sheriffs that have done this that never could lose an election. So politics, I don't get it and I don't like it. And no sheriff should compromise for their political expediency the liberty and freedom of the people they were hired to protect.
And you're not talking about doing something crazy or some crazy protest. You're not talking about doing anything that is inflammatory. You're not talking about inciting anything other than peacefully standing up for the people's rights and their freedoms and their liberties, and using the sheriffs that will stand up with them to protect it, because that's what their oath is. And you're just doing this as a reflection of what our constitutional rights already are. Is that
In my
accurate?
Supreme Court case, I have a review of my Supreme Court case on my website, and this is it. You can see the name, Supreme Court case for state sovereignty. That's my case. This totally backs everything that you and I just are talking about. It's a powerful case. It's the most powerful 10th Amendment state sovereignty case in the history of our country, and everybody should read it.
Well, we got about a minute or two left. Is there anything that you think that you haven't had a chance to say? Because I want to make sure I've asked all the right questions, but also, lastly, before we sign out is, how can people get involved? I've been playing your website down here sporadically. How can people get involved? But anything to say?
That is the main thing I wanted to say. Every citizen of this country can join the CSPOA. There's a CSPOA posse. This is how we stay funded. It's $11 a month or $99 a year. That's it, to help support this amazing, miraculous solution. There's so many people out there trying to wake you up. That's great. Okay, we're awake now. We've got to focus on a solution, and you need to be working with your sheriffs to make sure that this solution is it materializes, that it's implemented. And we, the people, with our sheriffs, can make this happen. And again, there's power in numbers, but your sheriff working with you to defend your liberty in a very strong and powerful approach, because he's the ultimate authority in your county. We can make this happen. Again, we, the people, with the constitutional sheriff, take back America one county at a time.
Everything that's going on right now in our country, whether it's election problems or anything else, can be fixed with the border. Anything can be fixed with you.
Absolutely, and the sheriff can stop every bit of this abuse, and some of them already have. Quite a few already have. Who stood against the mandates of the COVID-19 shutdowns? Over 500 sheriffs nationwide did that.
Absolutely love it, Sheriff. Hang on one second while I close out the show, and I'm going to talk to you in just a second. But I want everybody to please go to the website, CSPOA.org. Check it out. Sure, even though I'm doing a show for my radio show, my podcast, and my Rumble page, I always like doing a little extra promotion of organizations, of people that I can really think is doing a good thing, and I think you should go to for more answers. And please tune in their site. Go visit my site, williamwallace.net, and also check out my promo code. You saw that at mypillow.com with the promo code WWFA. Please share this interview, and also be in touch with these guys and find out how you can help be able to protect freedom and liberty right there with them. Thank you so much.